Have you ever read something online that made you lock every door in your house? Something that made you check under your bed before sleeping? Tonight, I'm sharing stories that real people posted on Reddit. Stories so disturbing, so utterly terrifying, that they've haunted thousands of readers for years. These aren't creepypastas. These aren't fictional tales. These are real experiences from real people who lived through absolute nightmares. And by the end of this video, you might just leave the lights on tonight. Let's begin. I need to tell you about the night I met the Smiling Man. This happened to me about 7 years ago, but I still think about it almost every single day. I was living in Seattle at the time, working late shifts at a restaurant downtown. My apartment was only about a mile away, and I'd walk home around 1 or 2 in the morning several times a week. I know what you're thinking, stupid decision, right? But Seattle felt safe back then. The streets were well lit, there were always a few people around, even at that hour. I'd made that walk dozens of times without incident. Until that night. It was a Thursday, I remember, because Thursdays were always slow, and I'd gotten off earlier than usual, around midnight. The air was crisp, that particular kind of cold that comes with autumn in the Pacific Northwest. I had my headphones in, listening to a podcast, just trying to decompress from another shift of dealing with difficult customers. The streets were emptier than usual, but I didn't think much of it. I was about halfway home when I first saw him. He was at the far end of the block, maybe 200 feet away, standing directly under a streetlight. At first, I thought he was just another person walking home like me, but something about the way he stood there made me pause. He wasn't moving. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just standing there, facing my direction. I pulled one earbud, suddenly aware of how quiet the street had become. No cars, no voices from nearby bars, just the sound of my own breathing and the distant hum of the city. Then he started walking toward me. But it wasn't normal walking. His legs were doing this weird, exaggerated movement, like a march, but slower, more deliberate. His knees lifted high with each step, and his arms swung stiffly at his sides. It reminded me of an old-timey cartoon character, the way he moved. It was so bizarre that I actually stopped walking and just stared. That's when I saw his face. He was smiling. Not a normal smile, a grotesque ear-to-ear grin that looked painful. His mouth was stretched so wide I could see his teeth from where I stood, and his eyes were locked directly at me. He didn't blink. He didn't look away. He just kept doing that strange, jerky walk, getting closer with each step, that horrible smile plastered across his face. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to move. I turned around and started walking quickly in the opposite direction, back toward the restaurant. I told myself I was overreacting, that he was probably just drunk or high, that Seattle was full of weird characters at night. But when I glanced over my shoulder, he had changed direction too. He was following me. And he was moving faster now, those long, exaggerated strides covering more ground. The smile never wavered. His eyes never left me. I ran, full sprint. I didn't care about looking stupid or paranoid anymore. Every horror movie I'd ever seen flashed through my mind. The victim who didn't run fast enough, who didn't trust their instincts, who ended up dead. I wasn't going to be that person. The restaurant was still 3 blocks away. My legs burned. My lungs screamed. I could hear his footsteps behind me now, that strange rhythmic slapping of shoes on concrete, getting closer. I didn't dare look back again. I turned a corner onto a busier street, and by some miracle, there was a group of people standing outside a bar smoking cigarettes. I ran straight to them, nearly colliding with a woman in a leather jacket. "Please," I gasped, my voice shaking. "There's someone following me. He's—" I turned to point, but the street behind me was empty. He was gone. The smokers looked at me like I was crazy. One guy asked if I was okay, if I needed them to call someone. I scanned the street, the alleyways, the shadows between buildings. Nothing. No sign of him anywhere. It was like he had vanished the moment I reached other people. I stayed with that group for 20 minutes, chain-smoking cigarettes I bummed off them even though I didn't smoke, until I felt safe enough to call an Uber. I never walked home alone after that night. Here's the thing that still bothers me, that keeps me up at night even now. I posted this story on Reddit a few days later on the LetsNotMeet subreddit. I was looking for reassurance, maybe some explanation for what I experienced. Within hours, dozens of people commented saying they'd seen him too. Different cities, Portland, Vancouver, even as far as Denver, but always the same description: the exaggerated walk, the impossibly wide smile, the unblinking stare, always appearing late at night, always following people until they reached safety or other people. One commenter said they'd heard about the smiling man from their grandfather, who claimed to have seen the same figure in the 1960s. No one knows who he is, no one knows what he wants, but he's still out there, somewhere, walking through empty streets with that terrible smile, waiting for the next person to walk alone at night.
When I was 15, my family moved into an old Victorian house in rural Pennsylvania. My parents got it for an absolute steal, a massive 3-story home with original woodwork, a wraparound porch, and a huge backyard. The real estate agent said it had been empty for almost 4 years after the previous owner passed away. My mom was thrilled. My dad saw it as a great investment. I felt uneasy the moment we pulled into the driveway. There was something about that house, something wrong. The first week was normal enough. We unpacked boxes, painted rooms, argued about furniture placement, but I noticed things, small things. Doors I'd closed would be open. I'd hear footsteps on the stairs when everyone was in bed. The basement door, a heavy oak thing with an old-fashioned lock, would swing open no matter how many times we closed it. My dad insisted it was just the house settling, that old homes did this. He even installed a new latch on the basement door. It still opened. I avoided the basement. Something about it made my skin crawl. The stairs descended into complete darkness. The single bulb at the bottom had burned out the day we moved in, and every replacement bulb we tried would blow within hours. My dad eventually gave up and bought a heavy-duty flashlight that we kept at the top of the stairs. But I could smell it. Even with the door closed, I could smell the basement. It wasn't the normal musty smell of old houses. It was something else, something organic and wrong, like meat left out in the sun, mixed with earth, and something chemical I couldn't identify. 3 weeks after we moved in, I started hearing the voice. It would always happen late at night, after my parents had gone to bed. I'd be in my room on the second floor, trying to sleep, when I'd hear it, a whisper, so faint I could barely make out the words. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe someone walking past the house. But then I realized it was coming from inside, from below me, from the basement. "Come down here." That's what it said, over and over, always the same 3 words, in a voice that sounded like someone with their mouth full of water, wet, garbled, wrong. I told my parents. My mom suggested I was having nightmares. My dad checked the basement with his flashlight, found nothing, and told me I was letting the creepiness of the old house get to me. Neither of them heard the voice. It only spoke to me. The whispers got worse. Every night they'd get louder, more insistent. I started sleeping with my headphones in, music turned up loud enough to drown out everything else. But
but some nights I'd still hear it, cutting through the music, through my closed door, through the floor beneath my bed. Then one night, I woke up standing at the basement door. I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't remember walking down the hallway, down the main staircase, through the kitchen to the basement door. But there I was at 2:30 in the morning, my hand on the doorknob, the door already open, darkness yawning before me. And the smell, God, the smell was overwhelming, pouring out of that basement like a physical thing. I gagged, stumbling backward, my heart hammering in my chest. But even as I backed away, some part of me wanted to go down those stairs. Something was pulling me, calling me, demanding that I descend into that darkness. I ran back to my room and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I told my parents I was done. I wasn't staying in that house anymore. I'd sleep in my car if I had to. My dad, finally taking me seriously, said he'd go down to the basement and figure out where that smell was coming from. He grabbed the flashlight, and I watched from the kitchen doorway as he descended into the dark. He was down there for almost 20 minutes. When he came back up, his face was pale, and he wouldn't look at me. "We're calling someone," was all he said. The police came that afternoon with a canine unit. They were down there for hours. When they finally emerged, they brought evidence bags, lots of evidence bags. They wouldn't tell us what they'd found, but they strongly suggested we find somewhere else to stay for a while. We stayed with my aunt for 2 weeks. During that time, my parents were interviewed multiple times by detectives. I was never told the full story, but I overheard enough conversations, picked up enough context clues to understand the basics. The previous owner hadn't died of natural causes. He'd been a recluse, living alone in that house for decades. And the basement had been his workshop. Neighbors reported strange noises at night, missing pets in the area, but he was elderly and kept to himself, so no one thought much of it. When he finally died, no one checked the basement, not thoroughly, not until we moved in, not until something down there started calling to me. The house was condemned. We lost our down payment, all the work we'd put into it. My parents never told me exactly what was found in that basement, and I've never pushed them for details. Some things are better left unknown. But I still wonder, what was calling to me? Was it something the old man left behind? Some echo of the terrible things he had done? Or was it something else? Something that had been drawn to that place by all that suffering and darkness? And here's what really terrifies me, what keeps me awake even now, 12 years later. I still hear it sometimes, when I'm alone, when it's quiet, that wet, garbled whisper cutting through the silence. "Come down here." Whatever it was, I don't think it stayed in that basement. I think it followed me. I need to tell you about my grandmother's house and the thing that visited her every night at exactly midnight. This story still gives me chills, and it's the reason I'll never live alone in an old house, no matter how beautiful it might be. My grandmother, Nana, we called her, lived by herself in a farmhouse in upstate New York. The house had been in our family for 4 generations, sitting on 20 acres of land surrounded by woods. After my grandfather passed away, everyone assumed Nana would sell the place and move into something smaller, closer to town, but she refused. She loved that house, loved her independence, and insisted she was perfectly fine living alone. For the most part, she was. She gardened, she read, she watched her shows. We'd visit every few weeks, and she seemed happy. But when I was 19, I stayed with her for a full week while my parents were out of the country. That's when I learned about the visitor. The first night, I was awakened by footsteps in the hallway outside my room. They were slow and deliberate, heavy enough that I could hear the old floorboards creaking under the weight. I glanced at my phone, 11:58 p.m. I assumed it was Nana, maybe getting up to use the bathroom or get a glass of water. I started to drift back to sleep when I heard her bedroom door open and close. Then I heard the footsteps again, moving past my door, heading toward the stairs. But Nana's door had just closed. She should be in her room now, so whose footsteps were in the hallway? I sat up in bed, my heart starting to race. The footsteps reached the stairs and began to descend. Step, creak, step, creak. A slow, methodical rhythm. They reached the bottom, moved through the living room, and then stopped. Complete silence. I waited, barely breathing, for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 10 minutes. Finally, I convinced myself I'd imagined it, that I was just jumpy, sleeping in an unfamiliar place. I lay back down and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I mentioned it to Nana while she was making breakfast. "Oh, don't worry about that," she said casually, flipping a pancake. "That happens every night." I stared at her. "What do you mean, every night?" She turned to look at me, and something in her expression made my blood run cold. She looked resigned, tired, like someone who'd been carrying a heavy secret for too long. "Every night at midnight, give or take a few minutes, someone walks through this house, down the stairs, through the living room, and out the back door. Been happening for about 3 years now, ever since your grandfather died." "Have you seen who it is?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. "I've never looked, and you shouldn't either." That should have been my cue to leave, to call my parents, to get Nana out of that house, but I was 19 and stupid and thought I could handle it. I decided I'd stay up that night and see what was really going on. Maybe it was an intruder, maybe a homeless person who'd found a way in. Whatever it was, it had a rational explanation. The second night, I positioned myself at the top of the stairs with my phone ready to call 911 and a baseball bat I'd found in the closet. At 11:55 p.m., I heard Nana's door close. The house fell silent. At exactly midnight, I heard the first creak. It came from the far end of the hallway near the guest bathroom. Then another creak, closer, then another. Something was walking down the hallway toward me, toward the stairs. I raised my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it down the hallway. There was nothing there, but the footsteps continued. I could see the floorboards compressing slightly as something moved toward me, could hear the distinctive groan of old wood under weight, but there was nothing visible, nothing I could see. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. They stopped for a moment, and I felt something pass right in front of me. A coldness, not just cold air, but a complete absence of warmth, like standing next to an open freezer in winter. The temperature in the hallway dropped so suddenly I could see my breath. Then the footsteps continued. Step, creak, step, creak. I should have stayed put. I should have let whatever it was do its nightly walk and leave, but I followed it. I crept down the stairs, keeping my distance, following the sound. The footsteps moved through the living room, past my grandmother's rocking chair that sat facing the window, and headed toward the back door. I heard the old doorknob turn, heard the hinges creak as the door swung open. The footsteps crossed the threshold and stopped. I reached the door and looked out into the backyard. The moon was bright that night, casting long shadows across the grass. I could see the old oak tree where my grandfather had hung a tire swing for me when I was little. I could see the garden where Nana grew her tomatoes. I could see the wood line, dark and imposing at the edge of the property. And standing at the edge of those woods, barely visible in the moonlight, I could see a figure. It was tall, taller than any person I'd ever seen, maybe 7 or 8 feet tall. Its proportions were wrong, limbs too long, body too thin. It stood completely still, facing the house, facing me. We stayed like that for what felt like an eternity, locked in some kind of standoff. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It kept trying to rationalize it. A tree, a shadow, a trick of the light. But I knew. Some primal part of me knew exactly what I was looking at. Then it moved. Not toward me, thank God. It turned slowly, mechanically, and walked into the woods. Within seconds, it was swallowed by the darkness between the trees. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and ran back upstairs. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in my room with the lights on, the baseball bat clutched in my hands, listening to every creak and groan of that old house until the sun finally came up. The next morning, Nana was in the kitchen again, making coffee like nothing had happened. "You looked, didn't you?" she said without turning around. I couldn't speak, I just nodded. She sighed, a deep, weary sound. "Your grandfather saw it too, right before he died. He was sitting in his rocking chair one night, looking out the window at about midnight, and he saw it standing at the woodline. Had a heart attack right there in his chair. The doctors said it was sudden, that he didn't suffer, but I know better. I know what killed him." "Nana, we need to leave," I managed to say. "We need to get out of this house." She shook her head. "It doesn't want me. It never comes inside, never crosses the doorway. It just walks through, every night, like it's looking for something, or waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" She finally turned to look at me, and her eyes were filled with a sadness so profound that it made me want to cry. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I think it's been waiting for a very long time." I left that day. I couldn't stay any longer. For years, I begged Nana to move, to sell the house, to come live with us. She always refused. She lived in that house for another 8 years, and every single night at midnight, that thing would walk through her home and stand at the edge of the woods. She died last year, peacefully, in her sleep. We sold the house to a young couple looking for a quiet place in the country. I should have told them, I should have warned them, but who would have believed me? Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if it's still there, still walking through that house at midnight, still standing at the woodline, waiting. And I wonder, now that Nana's gone, who is it waiting for?